In 1953, a top-secret CIA program began hunting for the ultimate weapon. Not a bomb or a missile, but something far more terrifying. They wanted to completely erase a human mind and rebuild it from scratch. For 20 years, they drugged unwitting patients, shocked their brains with electricity, and locked them in sensory deprivation chambers. Their goal was to create perfect assassins with no memory of their crimes. What they created instead was a trail of broken minds and destroyed lives that the government tried desperately to hide. The year was 1953, and America was terrified. During the Korean War, captured American soldiers had confessed to war crimes they never committed. They spoke like robots, repeating communist propaganda with empty stares. Intelligence officials were convinced the Soviets had developed mind control technology that could turn anyone into a programmed agent. The CIA's response was Project MKUltra, the most extensive mind control program in American history. The mission was simple but chilling. Find a way to completely erase human memory and personality, then rebuild the mind with new programming. They called it creating a blank slate, and they were willing to do anything to achieve it. Led by chemist Sidney Gottlieb, MKUltra operated with unlimited funding and zero oversight. The program would eventually encompass 149 different projects across universities, hospitals, and psychiatric institutions. What made it truly terrifying was that most victims had no idea they were test subjects. The CIA's researchers developed an arsenal of techniques designed to break down human consciousness. Their most promising weapon was scopolamine, a drug derived from plants in the nightshade family. In small doses, scopolamine acts like a truth serum, making people compliant and talkative. In larger doses, it becomes something far more sinister. Scopolamine can completely block the formation of new memories while keeping victims conscious and responsive. CIA researchers discovered they could give someone a massive dose, conduct hours of interrogation or programming, and the subject would remember nothing afterward. It was the perfect drug for creating amnesia on demand. But scopolamine was just the beginning. The program also extensively tested mescaline, a powerful hallucinogen that had been studied since World War II. Unlike LSD, which creates vivid but obviously unreal experiences, mescaline produces hallucinations that seem completely authentic. Researchers believed they could use it to implant false memories or make subjects believe events that never happened. The most brutal tool in their arsenal was electroconvulsive therapy, but not the controlled medical procedure used in hospitals. MKUltra researchers used massive electrical shocks designed to completely destroy existing memories and personality structures. They would shock patients dozens of times in a single session, far beyond any therapeutic dose. Make sure to subscribe, because what we're about to reveal about these experiments will shock you more than anything you've heard so far. The most notorious MKUltra researcher was Dr. Ewen Cameron, a Scottish psychiatrist who ran experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Cameron believed that mental illness was caused by faulty patterns of thinking, and that the only cure was to completely erase those patterns and start over. Cameron's technique, which he called psychic driving, was designed to reduce patients to an infant-like state. He would put patients into drug-induced comas lasting weeks or even months. While they were unconscious, he would play tape-recorded messages on repeat, sometimes for 16 hours a day. The messages were designed to break down their sense of self and replace it with new programming. But the comas were just the beginning. When patients woke up, Cameron would subject them to massive doses of electroshock therapy. He called it depatterning, and his goal was to completely destroy their existing memories and personality. Many patients received 2 or 3 times the normal dose of electricity, administered multiple times per day. The results were horrifying. Patients who entered Cameron's program as functioning adults often emerged unable to recognize their own families. They forgot how to walk, how to use the bathroom, even how to speak. Some never recovered their memories or personalities. They became living ghosts, trapped in bodies that no longer belonged to them. One patient, a woman named Linda McDonald, entered Cameron's program suffering from minor depression. After 5 months of treatment, she had no memory of her husband, her children, or her entire adult life. She couldn't read, write, or perform basic tasks. Her family sued the CIA decades later, but no amount of money could restore what Cameron had stolen from her. While Cameron was destroying minds in Montreal, other MKUltra researchers were working on an even more ambitious goal. They wanted to create Manchurian candidates, programmed assassins who could be activated with trigger words and would have no memory of their crimes afterward. Project Artichoke, MKUltra's predecessor program, had already shown that hypnosis combined with drugs could make people perform actions against their will. Researchers had successfully hypnotized subjects into revealing classified information and even attempting to harm others. But they wanted to go further. The ideal Manchurian candidate would be a normal person living a regular life until they received an activation signal. Then they would carry out their mission with mechanical precision and immediately forget everything afterward. The assassination would appear to be the work of a lone gunman with no connections to intelligence agencies. Researchers experimented with implanting post-hypnotic suggestions that could be triggered by specific words, sounds, or visual cues. They tested whether they could program someone to kill on command and then forget they had ever been trained as an assassin. The experiments were conducted on psychiatric patients, prisoners, and volunteers who had no idea what they were really signing up for. MKUltra researchers deliberately targeted the most vulnerable members of society. Psychiatric patients were ideal subjects because their strange behavior after experiments could be dismissed as symptoms of mental illness. Prisoners had no choice but to participate and no legal recourse if something went wrong. Drug addicts and alcoholics were easily manipulated with promises of free substances. Many experiments were conducted without any consent at all. Researchers would slip LSD into drinks at bars and parties, then follow subjects to observe their reactions. They tested drugs on hospital patients who were receiving routine medical care. Some subjects were given multiple doses of different experimental substances without knowing what they were taking. The program also targeted marginalized communities that investigators knew would have difficulty seeking justice. Indigenous people, minorities, and foreign nationals were frequently used as test subjects. Researchers believed these populations were less likely to be believed if they reported being drugged or tortured by government agents. Frank Olson was one of the few victims whose story became public, but only because his death was impossible to hide. Olson was an Army biological researcher who was secretly given LSD during a CIA retreat in 1953. 9 days later, he fell to his death from a hotel window in New York City. The official story was suicide, but later investigations revealed evidence that Olson may have been murdered to prevent him from exposing the program. What made MKUltra even more chilling was the discovery that the Soviet Union was conducting similar experiments. CIA documents revealed that Soviet researchers were also exploring chemical incapacitation and psychological manipulation. Both superpowers were racing to develop the ultimate mind control technology, and both were willing to sacrifice human lives to win that race. Soviet techniques focused heavily on physical and psychological torture combined with drugs. They developed methods for breaking down prisoners' resistance and implanting false confessions or beliefs. Like their American counterparts, Soviet researchers targeted prisoners, psychiatric patients, and political dissidents. The parallel development of mind control programs in both countries created a feedback loop of escalation. Each side justified their own atrocities by pointing to the threat posed by the other. This Cold War mentality allowed researchers on both sides to convince themselves that any experiment, no matter how brutal, was justified by national security. MKUltra researchers developed sophisticated techniques for combining different methods of mind control. They discovered that sensory deprivation made subjects more susceptible to hypnosis and drug effects. Patients would be placed in soundproof chambers or underwater tanks for days or weeks, completely cut off from external stimulation. The combination of drugs, electricity, and sensory deprivation created a perfect storm for destroying human consciousness. Researchers could systematically break down every aspect of a person's identity: from their memories to their basic motor functions. Some subjects emerged from these experiments as completely different people. The program also explored more subtle forms of manipulation. Researchers studied how to use environmental factors like lighting, temperature, and sound to influence behavior. They tested whether certain frequencies could induce specific emotional states or make people more compliant. These techniques were designed to be undetectable, allowing agents to manipulate targets without them realizing they were being controlled. By the early 1970s, MKUltra was becoming a liability. The Vietnam War had made Americans suspicious of government activities, and investigative journalists were getting too close to the truth. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKUltra documents. The cover-up was systematic and thorough. Thousands of pages of research notes, experiment reports, and victim records were burned or shredded. Researchers were instructed to deny any knowledge of the program. Victims who tried to seek help were dismissed as delusional or attention-seeking, but the cover-up wasn't perfect. A few thousand documents survived the purge, and they painted a horrifying picture of government-sponsored torture and experimentation. When these documents were discovered in 1975, they triggered congressional investigations that exposed the scope of MKUltra for the first time. The Church Committee and Rockefeller Commission investigations revealed that the CIA had violated every principle of medical ethics and human rights. They had conducted illegal experiments on American citizens, destroyed lives for the sake of research, and then tried to hide the evidence. The revelations led to new laws requiring informed consent for all human experimentation. Despite the congressional investigations, very few people were ever held accountable for MKUltra. The destruction of documents made it impossible to prosecute most of the researchers involved. Victims found it nearly impossible to prove they had been experimented on, especially when their memories had been deliberately destroyed. Some victims of Cameron's experiments in Montreal eventually received settlements from the Canadian government and the CIA, but the compensation was minimal compared to the damage that had been done. Many victims had spent decades trying to rebuild their lives, often without understanding what had happened to them. The legal system provided little recourse for most MKUltra victims. Courts were reluctant to hold the government accountable for activities conducted in the name of national security. Statutes of limitations had expired, witnesses had died, and evidence had been destroyed. The message was clear. The government could torture its own citizens with impunity as long as it claimed to be protecting national security. MKUltra officially ended in 1973, but its impact continues to this day. The techniques developed by the program influenced interrogation methods used by law enforcement and intelligence agencies around the world. The research into mind control and psychological manipulation became the foundation for modern torture techniques. The program also had a lasting effect on public trust in government and medical institutions. The revelation that doctors and researchers had participated in torture experiments damaged the credibility of the medical profession. Patients began to question whether they could trust their physicians, and research subjects became more wary of participating in clinical trials. Perhaps most importantly, MKUltra demonstrated how easily ordinary people could become complicit in atrocities. The researchers who conducted these experiments weren't sadistic monsters. They were respected scientists and doctors who convinced themselves that their work was necessary for national security. Their willingness to sacrifice human lives for abstract goals revealed something deeply disturbing about human nature. Even today, many questions about MKUltra remain unanswered. The destruction of documents means we may never know the full scope of the program or the total number of victims. Some researchers believe that similar programs continued under different names after MKUltra officially ended. The techniques developed by MKUltra researchers have never been fully declassified. Intelligence agencies around the world continue to study mind control and psychological manipulation, often using research methods that would have been familiar to Sidney Gottlieb and Donald Cameron. The line between legitimate psychological research and torture remains dangerously blurred. Most disturbing of all is the possibility that some MKUltra experiments actually succeeded. The program's goal was to create undetectable mind control techniques that could be used against foreign agents and domestic dissidents. If researchers achieved even partial success, those techniques could still be in use today. The CIA's search for the perfect mind control weapon never officially succeeded, but the research never really stopped. Modern neuroscience has advanced far beyond what MKUltra researchers could have imagined, and new technologies for influencing human behavior are being developed every day. In classified laboratories around the world, scientists are still searching for ways to erase memories, implant thoughts, and control human consciousness. The techniques have become more sophisticated, but the goal remains the same. The next time you hear about breakthrough research in neuroscience or psychology, ask yourself, who is funding this research, and what do they really plan to do with it?